Our presentation is on the four dharma seals. Similar to the Four Noble Truths, these fundamental teachings are at the core of Buddhism. As Songzar Khyentse Rinpoche puts it, if all these four seals are found in a path or a philosophy, it doesn't matter whether you call it Buddhist or not. You can call it what you like. The words Buddhist or Buddhism are not important. If one understands the seals, the statement is quite sensible, but for one who does not, it may seem odd. Keep this in mind as we continue through the topic.
Although the four seals have not always been referred to in Tibetan Buddhist teachings, their meanings and practical uses have always been at the heart of Buddhism. The seals themselves are core principles in Buddhist philosophy and guide one along the path of the Buddha and his own realizations. The four seals are: all compounded things are impermanent, all emotions are painful, all phenomena are without inherent existence, and nirvana is beyond extremes or description. The first and most fundamental seal is all compounded things are impermanent. Once one understands this seal, they can more easily understand the latter and more complex seals. By compounded, it refers to both space and time, in which there is no present. Because if the present was actually there and permanent, there could be no past or future. And this is why our human nature of believing in a permanent present is flawed. Buddhists do not believe it is bad to live in an impermanent world. They just understand this impermanence causes suffering. Most humans live life with the assumption that their life is a permanent phenomenon. And when they do have moments of realization, they attempt to halt this impermanence. As we've discussed in class, the whole beauty industry is a byproduct of the fight against impermanence and aging. Buddhists believe that one can be liberated when they no longer live their life under the closed-minded belief that life is permanent. I myself constantly live my life with the assumption of permanence. With a busy schedule from school, it's hard for me to stop and realize that not one moment is the same, and eventually everything ends. I would say most Americans don't live their life with the idea of impermanence in mind, and this causes a great deal of suffering. The second seal of Dharma is that all emotions are painful. The Tibetan word for emotion in the context of this second seal is zagach, which can translate to contaminated or stained, in the sense of being permeated by confusion or duality. The reason many people are permeated by confusion and duality and thus are suffering is because they misunderstand the function of emotions. We see emotions as either good or bad, but in Buddhism it is understood that any emotion, happy or sad, causes suffering. Because of the nature of impermanence, no one emotion is going to stay with you forever. So by succumbing to one's happy emotions, one is opening themselves up to bad emotions as well. Dongzar Khyentse Rinpoche says that many of us mistake pain for pleasure. The pleasure we now have is actually the very cause of the pain that we are going to get sooner or later. Another Buddhist way of explaining this is to say that when a big pain becomes smaller, we call it pleasure. That's what we call happiness. Because emotions are impermanent and do not have an independent existence, they serve no purpose in the mind of Buddhists. In my life, I am subject to my emotions at all times. I can have a great day and the next day feel horrible. And it's hard to resist happy emotions when you are experiencing them. And when you experience angry emotions, you have everyone to blame but yourself. The Buddhist school of teaching tells us that we must want happiness for all sentient beings. And this is true compassion, without the sense of self or subjectivity that goes along with that compassion that most humans have. This is called Mahakaruna, or great compassion.
The third seal of Dharma is that all phenomena are empty, or without any inherent existence. Objects are conceived by people and are external, and are therefore non-existent. If, for example, one were to look at a building and perceive it for how it truly is, they would see that it is, in fact, a compounded structure and impermanent. This does not mean that there is no structure there, only that it does not exist in the way it seems to exist. At first glance, a statement such as this seems to be counterintuitive. A common individual may even brush it off as foolish and nonsensical, but if actually thought about, it makes sense. The structure that is seen is only a composition of smaller and smaller structures that will be around temporarily and will last no longer than any other phenomena. In Mahayana Buddhism, the doctrine of shunyata, or emptiness, is taught. This is to say that there is no self, nor is there no self, but instead relativity. With regards to myself, it is more true to understand that my perception of my own existence is rooted in a combination of impermanent physical states and changing mental states rather than any true existence. Unless I am able to believe this, even compassion can be impossible to achieve. If the goal of being compassionate is the main focus, the compassion becomes a part of my own interpretation and will only lead to disappointment. Only if I were to realize that myself, the problem, and my compassion don't truly exist in the sense I currently think they do, will I then be able to practice something such as true compassion. We cannot use this realization of inexistence to ignore good and bad, however. We can use it only to help shape the world for the betterment of all. The fourth and final seal of Dharma is that nirvana is beyond extremes, which is to say that it is beyond duality. The concepts of right and wrong, or similar sibling terms, do not exist. There only is. It is not a tangible achievement, nor is it necessarily intangible. It is not anything that is added or gained. It is only the achievement of removing any illusion or distraction to reveal what was really there all along. In order to fully give up any worldly illusions, one must first understand the other three seals. If one were to try to give up essentially everything without complete understanding of the seals, they would only end up with more suffering and stray further from the truth. This is a much harder and deeper level task to bring into most lives. The fact that nirvana is inconceivable to most makes it a tough concept to strive for, but with rigorous meditation and reflection, it may eventually be possible for an individual even on the same level as, say, myself.
The four seals represent key underlying knowledge that is essential for one to understand and adopt Buddhist philosophy. The knowledge and realization of impermanence is at the heart of all four of the seals. It is directly at the heart of the first seal, but it is also related to the second, because all emotions, like all compounding phenomena, are impermanent, and thus they have no inherent existence of any sort. This ties into the third seal. The perception people have of most tangible and intangible items is deeply flawed. Not only do we fail to recognize the impermanence of phenomena, we perceive an inherent existence, which is a mere illusion, and all there is are smaller and smaller compositions of structures making up the illusion that we see. The fourth seal relates all three of the previous seals by joining them together to express that nirvana is beyond extremes or duality. These seals are not just theories or hypothetical. They have practical uses. Achieving bodhicitta and reaching enlightenment are some of these uses, but they take years of mental training, and one can only be that disciplined if they truly have the correct mindset. Understanding and contemplating the four seals allows one to begin this process of eliminating suffering. Knowing all this, why do we as a society cling to materialistic objects or personal wants and dwell on problems that won't last? Another thought to leave off on: how can we work towards viewing phenomena in this manner as impermanent, sorrowful, and empty, without becoming nihilistic and thus violating the fourth seal?